Good day, students. I welcome you to study session 2 of biochemistry, which will discuss chemistry of carbohydrates. One of the first stable and recognizable categories of organic molecules, which is created by plants as they absorb solar energy, is carbohydrates. Carbohydrate performs a variety of roles, but one very important function is for it to act as a source of energy for fuel, cell, or living creature. In this study session, you'll be introduced to the basic chemistry of carbohydrates, which entails definitions, benefits, properties, classes, and structural forms of carbohydrates. At the end of this study session, you should be able to explain the term carbohydrate and its benefits. You should be able to highlight the functions and properties of carbohydrates. Also, you should be able to explain different classes of carbohydrates and also describe the structure of carbohydrates. What is carbohydrate? Carbohydrates are sugars. As the name implies, glucose is the basic sugar that is made by plants, and carbohydrates contains carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. The ratio of hydrogen to oxygen is always 2:1. The carbohydrates are primarily used by living organisms as a source of energy. The plants and bacteria called cyanobacteria produces carbohydrates by the process of photosynthesis. What are the benefits of carbohydrates? Carbohydrates contain soluble and insoluble elements which form, and the insoluble part is known as the fiber. This fiber promotes the regular bowel movement and regulates the rate of consumption of blood glucose. It also helps to remove excess cholesterol from the body, and fiber binds and attaches to the cholesterol in the small intestine and prevents the cholesterol particles from entering the bloodstream. Then cholesterol now exits the body via feces. What are the general properties of carbohydrates? Carbohydrates are linked with lipids and proteins and play important roles in cell interaction. They are organic compounds and they are aldehydes or ketones with many hydroxyl groups. Polysaccharides such as cellulose are structural elements in the cell walls of bacteria and plants. Ribose and deoxyribose sugars form the structural frame of the genetic materials. Ribonucleic acid, which is RNA, and DNA, which is deoxyribonucleic acid. Carbohydrates also act as a source of energy. What are the physical properties of carbohydrates? 1. Stereoisomerism. That is, compounds having same structural formula but they differ in spatial configuration. Example, glucose has 2 isomers with respect to penultimate carbon atom. They are D-glucose and L-glucose. Also, we have optical activity, which is the rotation of plane polarized light forming glucose and plus glucose and minus glucose. We also have the property of diastereoisomers, that is, it is the configurational changes with regards to carbon 2, carbon 3, or carbon 4 in glucose. Example is found in mannose and galactose. We also have the property of anomerism, which is a spatial configuration with respect to the first carbon atom in aldoses and second carbon atom in ketoses. What are the classification of carbohydrates? In terms of complexity, carbohydrate can be broadly classified into 3 basic categories. The simplest carbohydrates are monosaccharides, while the complex carbohydrates are oligosaccharides and polysaccharides. And oligosaccharides contain few monosaccharides, while a polysaccharide contains many monosaccharide subunits. Monosaccharides are simply referred to as simple sugars. They are the fundamental unit from which all other carbohydrates are formed. In monosaccharides, the number of carbons usually ranges from 3 to 7. Let's look at monosaccharides. Monosaccharides can exist as a linear chain or as ring-shaped molecule. In aqueous solutions, they are usually found in ring forms. The most important monosaccharides have 6 carbon atoms and a number of hydroxyl groups. For example, the primary energy storage carbohydrate used by living things is glucose, whose chemical formula is C6H12O6. During cellular respiration, energy is released from glucose, and that energy is used to help make adenosine triphosphate. Excess glucose is often stored as starch that is catabolized by humans and other animals that feed on plants. Galactose and fructose are other common examples of monosaccharides. Oligosaccharides, they consist of 2 to 10 monosaccharide units. Most important oligosaccharides are disaccharides. Oligosaccharides are compound sugars that yield 2 to 10 molecules of the same or different monosaccharides on hydrolysis. Oligosaccharides yielding 2 molecules of monosaccharides on hydrolysis are known as disaccharides. And the ones yielding 3, 4, 5 monosaccharides are known as trisaccharides, tetrasaccharides, and pentasaccharides respectively. Disaccharides are formed by 2 molecules of glucose but linked in different ways. What are polysaccharides? Many monosaccharides join together make a polysaccharide, as you can see on the picture on your screen. They can be joined together in one long linear chain, or they may be branched. When the polysaccharides are formed by the same type of monosaccharides, they are called homopolysaccharides. However, if polysaccharides are formed by different types of monosaccharides, such polysaccharides are called heteropolysaccharides. The most common polysaccharides are starch, cellulose, and glycogen, which are formed by hundreds of molecules of just one type of monosaccharides, which is glucose, and they are linked through glycosidic linkages. These polysaccharides are typical examples of homopolysaccharides. Going into the structure of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is an open chain structure, which is a long straight chain form of carbohydrates. In hemihectal structure, we can have hemihectal structure of carbohydrates too, which is the first in which the first carbon of the glucose condenses with the hydroxy group of the 5th carbon to form a ring structure. Likewise, we can have the Howard structure too, that shows the presence of pyranose ring structure. Thank you for listening and have a good day.